Anyone there?
I'm here.
Oh, hey. Oh, right. I can hear now.
Yeah, I can hear you too. We're good.
Okay, cool. Oh, it's gone again. Oh, you must be pressing something that's causing it.
Oh, the sound?
I don't know. No, something. It's gone again. Like the pictures have gone.
Oh, I turned off my video. There I am.
Oh yeah, I think that's it. Oh, it's probably because you're the only person on video.
Yeah. Okay, so okay. See? Yeah. My new standard, but they turn their thumbs up and that.
I'm just gonna turn on my video until we're ready.
Gone again.
So Good afternoon, everyone. I'm April Cummings in for Donna Bush. This is today's COVID-19 government press briefing. Thank you all for joining us. I'd quickly like to start by introducing our panel. We have the Honorable Premier Alden McLaughlin, His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Martin Roper. We have with us, of course, our Health Minister, Mr. Dwayne Seymour, and the Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Sam Bulgin. So we want to begin also by acknowledging that we are doing a lot of our work today by Zoom, and so our journalist panel is online with us, as well as several other representatives as needed. We begin, though, first with a prayer.
Let us pray. Great God and loving Father, we give you thanks, we give you praise for sparing our lives to see another day, and for your rich blessings upon us. Lord, we ask of you in a special way to forgive us of every sin individually, and of all unrighteousness collectively as a nation. Lord, we come before you in remembrance of how good you've been to us as a small territory. As we trace your hand throughout the years, we can only but say with wholehearted gratitude, thank you for the way in which you have led us in times past. Now, Lord, as we embark upon navigating this difficult period, we ask, oh God, that we will never feel or act as though we are independent of you. And so in acknowledgement of your divine guidance, we come today in prayer, asking you to grant the leadership of this country the wisdom of Solomon. Grant them the courage of Joshua. And in return, Lord, we ask that as they give updates and instructions to us as a people, that we'll have the discipline of Daniel and the integrity of Joseph in conducting ourselves. Help us, Lord, to recognize and be conscious and even conscientious that it will require a cooperative effort where each individual will have to play his or her part to protect and to maintain the numbers, flatten the curve. Oh God, give us that great resilience so that we can do what is necessary to see us through this time. We in a special way lift up the frontline workers. We place before you the most vulnerable in our community. May we do everything to ensure that there is no more community transmission of COVID-19 in these Cayman Islands. We remember the other nations that are struggling. Be with them, watch over them, and Lord, we commit into your hands this press briefing. Bless, protect, and keep, and grant us the assurance that you've already heard and that you'll deliver us through this period of trouble, is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
So to get things started today, we'll ask Dr. John Lee, Chief Medical Officer, to come and give us the latest information.
Good afternoon. There are 8 reports today to give you. There's 1 positive case of COVID-19 disease. That positive case is to be considered a community-acquired case and lives in the same household as a previously positively reported case. The total positives now go to 29. An additional 7 negatives takes us to 244 negatives, with the total number of tested being 273. There is no change in the Cayman Brac or Little Cayman results. In total, we have 1 fully recovered person. I'm describing them as fully recovered because they have no symptoms, and they also have had 2 tests to clear them since they've had their positive tests 14 days prior to the 2 tests. We have 13 clinically recovered cases. Additionally, I would like to report that CARFA has corroborated 10 samples that we recently sent for checking. There were 5 positives and 5 at a random sample of our negatives, all which have concurred. CARFA have concurred with the results produced by the Health Services Authority laboratory. I wanted to report, we mentioned earlier in prayer, the people that help us from day to day. Can I please say a mention for the cargo handlers at the ports, who we're eternally grateful to. They continue to work hard throughout this period. I also wanted to state that both Australia and the United Kingdom have said that the public health bodies and the ministries of health have said there are no dangers in relation to handling of cargo. And in particular for the cargo that we receive at sea, this has spent a long time at sea in hostile conditions where the virus won't be able to survive. You'll be aware that the students at the government-provided facilities are being tested for COVID-19. The reason that we've taken this decision, and I appreciate that it was late, is the fact that we've put so much resource into keeping them, the community safe by using this facility, that we wanted to complete that final step and check that we weren't, that there was no threat to for them returning to their families and their loved ones. This morning, a group of us, including myself, Director of Hazard Management, CEO Lizette Yearwood from the Health Service Authority, and Medical Officer of Health Sam Williams, talked with the assembled from there, and we're due to have a further discussion with them to answer any further questions they might have this afternoon, and His Excellency the Governor has agreed to join that call with us, which I thank him for. The tests themselves from today's samples have already gone to the lab, and we hope to have the results back within 24 hours, up to 36 hours, but perhaps even earlier than that. And once we receive a negative result, I see no reason for them to remain any further. The tests on them will proceed over the next few days as each group reaches the 14-day period of isolation that we've requested of them. I really do thank them hugely for their support in this endeavour. It is to protect our community, and they have done an amazing service in this regard, so thank you.
Let's go next to the Commissioner of Police for our latest update on how things have been going through both the hard and soft curfews to date.
Good afternoon. Reporting overnight. No policing issues of a significant nature occurred over the past 24 hours. The crime situation remains stable, and there's almost full compliance with the hard curfew nightly between 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. Looking at Little Cayman last night, no issues of any type arising. Cayman Brac, 4 vehicles intercepted by police, no breaches of curfew detected in all that were exempted essential services personnel. Grand Cayman overnight, 66 vehicles intercepted by police, 1 motorist found in breach of curfew and warned for prosecution. All other motorists were exempted essential services personnel. In addition, 1 pedestrian stopped in breach of curfew and warned for prosecution. Looking at this morning, since 6 a.m, traffic was flowing reasonably well across Grand Cayman. Police checkpoints remain in place at strategic locations, and they are supported by mobile patrols. Business at supermarkets and pharmacies continues to be well managed, well controlled, and social distancing protocols are being followed. Queues at banks in Georgetown Central and Commander Bay showed a marked increase today with lengthy delays, but social distancing protocols were being followed. There is light activity along our beaches this morning. Our helicopter and marine units continue to be deployed on extended tours to monitor activities in the water and across the island. Since 6 a.m. this morning, 6 persons were detected operating in breach of soft curfew regulations. In Bodden Town, 3 persons were found carrying out construction work on a site, warned for prosecution and directed to return home on an immediate basis. In Georgetown, a person was found conducting a car washing business, warned for prosecution and directed to return home on an immediate basis. And separately, 2 other persons were found travelling in a vehicle without lawful purpose. Both were warned for prosecution and required to return home on an immediate basis. If I could provide 2 updates, I think, which are significant. One is on a breach of curfew for the prosecutions. This morning at Summary Court, the first criminal prosecution for breach of the hard curfew was provided for under Section 51 of the Police Law 2017 revision, was heard and disposed of at Summary Court on a plea of guilty. The presiding magistrate, in dealing with this case, stated that public order, together with the more important public health consideration, make the offending conduct extremely serious and that the court must adopt a robust view of the breach. The presiding magistrate stated it was a deliberate breach of the curfew. There was no misunderstanding, no lack of awareness, no emergency circumstances. The magistrate determined that the defendant had high culpability because he had not given thought to the consequences of the breach. The court further determined that the risk of harm, and not actual harm, was at the most serious level. The court referred to statements made by the Governor and the Premier that emphasised the serious nature of this public health emergency and the efforts that are being undertaken to suppress transmission of the COVID-19 virus. In his ruling, the magistrate outlined that the starting point for sentencing is 6 months imprisonment, but having regard to the guilty plea, a sentence of 4 months imprisonment was imposed with immediate effect. I believe that the court has sent out a very strong message this morning to the community, confirming that a breach of curfew is a serious criminal offence that will be dealt with robustly by the courts. I thank the Director of Public Prosecutions and his team, and also the Chief Justice and the team at Court Services for their efforts to expedite prosecution of cases involving breach of curfew. I can advise that 21 police files are with the Director of Public Prosecutions for legal ruling as it relates to detected breaches of curfew, and that we're working on having them dealt with before summary court at the earliest possible date. Additional prosecution files are being prepared as we speak. And if I could just mention the new curfew order then from this evening. As required under the provisions of Section 49(1) of the Police Law 2017 revision, I have consulted with His Excellency the Governor, and I have advised him that it appears to me that having regard to the immediate threat of a serious hazard throughout the Cayman Islands associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, that there are reasonable grounds to believe that in the interest of public safety, it is necessary to impose a new curfew. I have received permission from His Excellency the Governor to impose a new curfew effective this evening, Friday the 3rd of April, commencing at 7 p.m. This new curfew order will remain in place for a period of 14 days and will run nightly from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m., commencing this evening, as I've said, Friday the 3rd of April, and ending at 5 a.m. on Friday the 17th of April 2020. I would like to highlight that Sundays will operate differently during this curfew period, where there will be full 24-hour lockdown. In effect, the curfew order will run Monday to Saturday inclusive, nightly between the hours of 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. On both Sundays during the curfew period, that is Sunday the 5th of April 2020 and Sunday the 12th of April 2020, the curfew period will extend for the full 24 hours. That is between 12:01 a.m. and 12 midnight. In other words, a full lockdown or hard curfew for 24 hours on both Sundays mentioned. Just before finishing, can I remind you that the hard curfew returns this evening at 7 p.m. and this will continue for the next 14 nights as I have outlined. I would be grateful to receive the full cooperation of the community. The risks remain too high to adopt any less measures. If you are not an exempted person and approved to be on the roads during curfew hours, please remain indoors and at home. I thank you in anticipation of your full cooperation as we go about protecting our communities and saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So just a few moments ago, I inadvertently missed a step in allowing the press the opportunity to ask some questions of Dr. Lee. I know Reshma is online now and would like to ask you a couple of questions, sir.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Commissioner, for your report. I just wanted to find out why this particular case was prosecuted today, and can you tell me how soon you expect that the other breaches of curfew cases are going to be dealt with by the court?
Thank you, Reshma. For the first part of your question, there were other predicate offences involved, and the person was appearing before court and pleaded guilty to the offence of breach of curfew, so was dealt with on that basis, on an immediate basis. The second question, if you could just repeat, please.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to find out if you can give us like a closer timeline as to when the other cases are going to be dealt with? I know you said they are with the DPP right now. Would that be possible at this stage?
I don't have a date. I have 21 files with the Director for Legal Ruling. We're working with the Chief Justice and his team and court services, and as soon as a date becomes available, we will move to prosecute those cases as speedily as possible.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
So we also have a few other members of the media who have raised their hands. However, it's not clear to me exactly who is looking for which person, so bear with me for just a moment. Felicia Rankin-Solins from Radio Cayman. Felicia, what is your question?
My question is for Dr. Lee. The students who chose to be isolated at home, are they going to be tested? And if they're not going to be tested, why is that?
I think the answer to that is alongside all the other passengers, the several hundred passengers that returned during that period. We're not planning to test them. They've already returned to the community. This particular group of people that we are testing, we still have them. They're still helping us by remaining isolated, and for that reason, they have not yet exposed their risk to the community. So we have an opportunity to take a further protection with them, and that's why we're testing that group alone. We also are, in fact, planning to test another group, which is a much smaller group of around 10 people who were essential workers that returned and have also been isolated. So for the reason that they have been isolated and they have protected the community, we're also testing that group, as we are the group at Sunshine Suite, Comfort Suites and Margaritaville.
Okay, people are asking why isolation in a facility isn't mandatory for someone who is a confirmed COVID-19 case. Can you explain that to the public for me, please?
We have not made that a mandatory requirement. I recognize that some countries are doing that. Every country has a different society, different norms, and a different way of doing things. What we have endeavored to do is to make it as easy as possible for people to come forward and to report their symptoms in order that we can give them the best treatment possible, and also check, should they need to be checked, if they might have this disease which has the threat of ravaging the whole community. What we would hate to do is to push underground people for the fear that they would not want to go somewhere. So we're trying to keep it as open as we can to encourage people to come forward for testing.
Okay, and my last question, Dr. Lee. People are scrambling, looking for ways to try to boost their immune systems to make them as strong as possible. Is there any dietary or other recommendations that could put them in the best position for their bodies to fight COVID-19?
That comes down to the same advice you'd get that protects you from any non-communicable disease. Please give up smoking if you smoke. Take regular exercise every day, at least 20 minutes, if not half an hour every day, such that you get shorter breath and your pulse rate rises if you're able. And eat healthy food. I know that's sometimes difficult to acquire, but as much as you can, those are the things that will see you well for the long term.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lee. That's all my questions.
We have Wendy Ledger from CNS Online. Wendy?
Thank you, April. I have two questions for Dr. Lee. My first is, can he give us an update on the status of the 14 healthcare workers that were placed in isolation in the wake of the first person that was believed to have the COVID-19 positive test, which was inconclusive, and we've recently had confirmed was positive. So what's the situation with those healthcare workers? That's my first question.
Okay, let me answer that because I won't be able to remember. So let me answer that first, if I may.
Okay,
if you launch three at me, my memory won't cope with that. So the first patient that tested positive was a patient at Health City. The first community-acquired case that had the inconclusive result that was positive. I have not. I'm sorry, I don't work at the HSA. I've not received any reports that any of them are unwell at all, and I'm pretty sure I would have done it. I've not received any, but I cannot give a categorical answer on that case. I may be able to text an answer before the end of this session. That was the first one.
Yes, that was the first one. Thank you. And the second one is just the situation on the well-being of patients. So we understand that there is one patient in the hospital who is sick, and so I just wondered if you could update us on that patient, how they're doing, and also are any of the more recently tested positive cases emerging as sick, and has anyone else been admitted, basically?
There's only the one admission that I previously mentioned, who continues to be in a stable situation, not ventilated. I know that some of the others who've tested positive have mild symptoms, but they all remain mild or moderate symptoms, but they all remain at home. That's the status for that group.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we have a question from Reshma.
Thank you, April. Dr. Lee, we've had quite a couple of comments come in asking for you to explain what you mean by clinically better. Can you please break that down for us in layman's terms, as well as for the recovered patients? You just said we have one recovered patient, which is welcome news. But can you say, in terms of recovered patients, can they still get the virus again, and can they spread the virus? Thank you.
Lots of questions there.
I also have a few after that.
Okay, so the reason I use this funny term, clinically recovered, is basically because we're waiting until they have a negative test after their symptoms have gone so that I can say that they're fully recovered. So when I say clinically recovered, I mean they've got no fever, they've got no ongoing cough, no shortness of breath. So that all the symptoms that we worry about with COVID-19 have gone away. But until we get those 2 negative tests 14 days after they have had their positive test, or after the symptoms have gone, whichever is the longer, we wouldn't say they were clear and fully recovered, so to speak. You see, I knew I wouldn't remember, Reshma, so I've forgotten your other questions. Fire them at me again.
Okay, sorry. With the recovered patients, can they get sick again, and can they spread the virus?
Okay, so if you're testing negative, so then you wouldn't be able to transmit the virus because there's no virus on board. So that's why we're testing them. There are stories well, not stories, there are reports that people can shed virus for an awfully long period of time afterwards. So some people have had positive tests in their blood some weeks after we would have expected it to go. We don't believe that those people are able to be infective, in that it may just be dead virus that's still in their bloodstream. But again, this is a evolving scientific story, so I don't think there has been any definitive answer on that group of people. As far as catching the virus again is concerned, it's, I don't know whether it's $1 million question, but it's a big question that we all want to understand better. From what I've read, I think that some of the people who've been positive before have not been that sick. So the significance of it is, I'm not 100% sure. More will come with time. With 1 million people in the world having had this disease, the scientific information should be coming out much faster now, but I haven't seen an answer to that absolutely. Oh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. I'll save my other questions for later in the presentation to allow it to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Thank you, Reshma, as well. All right, let's go now to the Premier.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'll start, as usual, with my world stats on the virus and its progress through the world. The United States of America, total cases now 265,506, up a whopping 20,629 overnight. Total deaths are now at 6,786, up 716 overnight. Italy, 119,827, up 4,585 overnight. Total deaths now 14,681, up 766 overnight. Spain, 117,710, up 5,645 overnight. Total deaths, 10,935, up 587 overnight. France, total cases, 59,105. Total deaths, 6,507, up an incredible 1,120 overnight. I haven't mentioned France, I think, in any of the previous reports, but I did today because of that huge increase in deaths in 24 hours. The United Kingdom, 38,168, up 4,450 overnight. Total deaths, 3,605, up 684 overnight. Canada, 11,747, 464 increase overnight, 173 deaths. Philippines, 3,018 cases reported, 385 new cases overnight, 136 deaths, up 29 overnight. India, 2,567, 24 cases overnight, 72 deaths. Jamaica, 47 cases, total of 3 deaths. New York, 102,863 cases, up 9,810 overnight. Total deaths now at 2,935, up 397 overnight. The commissioner spoke about his decision to extend the curfew, the hard curfew, if I may call it that, for a further 14 days, commencing tonight. The one significant change is that Sunday will become a hard curfew day. Not just this Sunday, but the Sunday that follows. Cabinet met this afternoon, hence, and we apologize for the delay in the start of the press briefing, to consider new regulations under the Public Health Prevention, Control, and Suppression of COVID-19 regulations, and amendments to them, which relate to what is called in the regulations the shelter-in-place provisions, known to us as the soft curfew. So the current shelter-in-place provisions expire on Monday, and Cabinet has decided to extend those provisions to coincide with the termination of the hard curfew, which will terminate on the 17th of April. There are some significant changes to the soft curfew provisions. I've asked the Honorable and Learned Attorney General to come to the press briefing today so that he can go through those in detail. But in summary, and I hope I don't get in trouble by trying to explain them myself, in broad strokes, as I indicated yesterday, the new shelter-in-place provisions will permit certain essential activity by persons based on your surname. So those whose surname begins with A through L, through K, through K, will be allowed to go out for their usual trip to the supermarket, to go to the pharmacy, to go on to visit the bank, to go to the gas stations on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Those with surnames beginning with L through Z will be able to do those things on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays only. So essentially, the provisions that we put in place with respect to attendance at supermarkets and banks by using your surname to divide the population to get relatively even numbers will apply generally across the board to the permitted activity. The only exceptions for this will be if you need to go to the doctor's office or any healthcare facility, or if you need to go to the pharmacy. Those activities are allowed for everybody all week long except for the hard curfew day of Sunday. The other exception is also to go and collect food from a restaurant. But all other activities which are not exempted are required to be done on your assigned day based on your surname. Now, there have been questions put to me since yesterday, and I suppose to other people, about whether or not this affects essential workers. It does not. The behavior that we are trying to control or to restrict is essentially non-work related activity. So if you are an essential worker and you work for CUC, or you work for the banks, or you work for the gas station, and you are required to go to work, you are entitled to go to work in the usual way. The activity that we are seeking to restrict further is non-work related activity. The one point that I ought to mention as well, because many people have asked about it, is what about exercise? So exercise will continue to be permitted 1.5 hours every day, except the hard curfew day, which is Sunday, which is a full lockdown. So those are essentially the new changes to the way the shelter in place or soft curfew will operate. The other significant change, though, which the Learned Attorney General will deal with in some detail, is that we are putting in place, with effect from the 6th, April the 6th, which is Tuesday, provisions which allow the police to issue tickets to people who are in breach of the soft curfew provisions. So it will not be necessary for you to be warned for prosecution and taken to court. You can be issued a ticket. If you dispute the ticket and you don't pay it within 28 days, then you can have your day in court. But the objective is to deal with these issues summarily and to impress upon everybody the importance of abiding by the regulations which have been and are being put in place for the protection of everyone and for the community as a whole. I think I have some other things that I need to mention, but I think rather than change the focus, I would ask the Learned Attorney General to go into some detail about the changes and the new ticketing arrangements before we move on to another subject.
Thank you, Premier, and good afternoon and happy Friday to everyone. The Premier pretty much sums it up quite well, but let me just go through them again for emphasis. So I will speak to amendments to the public health prevention, control, and suppression of COVID-19 regulations and new regulations to ensure compliance with the shelter-in-place requirements. Turning firstly to the amendments to the public health regulations, the key changes are as follows. No person shall, except with the written permission of the medical officer of health, visit or be permitted to visit a residential home care facility. Now, the significance of this is that these facilities usually house some of our most vulnerable. And of course, you want to protect them, ring-fence them from any potential exposure. So persons who are housed in these facilities will require written permission to go and visit them. We have added a new category of essential travel. This relates to persons undertaking travel required by a custody agreement by consent or custody order of the court. The significance of this is that it would therefore allow for parents in relation to children who do not live in the same household as their parents or one of their parents to continue existing arrangements for access to and contact between parents and children. So there are some court orders, as you know, and there's some agreements as well, where there's shared custody. And this is to facilitate those arrangements continuing without persons breaching the regulations. There are also an exemption if you're required to attend court, of course, or if you're required by a law enforcement agency to report to the police station, for example, in answering a bail condition. So those are exempted as well. Further restrictions on certain essential travel. As the public is aware, and as the Premier mentioned, arrangements had been put in place for supermarkets whereby only certain persons are allowed to visit them on certain days of the week. After discussion in Cabinet, the government has now sought to formalize this arrangement by including it in the regulations and also extending it to the following public places: convenience stores and mini-marts, retail banks, building societies and credit unions, as well as gas and refilling stations. I would remind the public that the following arrangements are the ones that are covered. Persons whose last name begin with the letters A to K shall only undertake essential travel to the aforementioned places on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And again, I reiterate essential travels. Persons whose last name or names begin with the letters L to Z, or some people say Z, shall only undertake essential travel to these places on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and on Saturdays. You heard earlier on that Sunday is now subject to hard curfew. This, of course, does not apply to essential workers, as the Premier points out. It does not apply to persons who work in businesses. It only applies to customers or patrons. So for clarity, this arrangement does not apply to pharmacies. It does not apply to healthcare facilities. And as the Premier said earlier, it does not apply to persons who undertake travel to restaurants which provide drive-through or curbside collection of food or provide takeout services for food. Although we would stress again, you only make these errands if they are absolutely necessary, and you keep them to the absolute minimum. Turning to the issue of, or the matter relating to ticketing offenses. As you're aware, the public health law provides in section 34 for the making of regulations to essentially control the spread of infectious disease. The section also provides for it to be a penalty which can be punishable with a maximum of up to $1,000 or 6 months imprisonment. The regulation itself, the section itself, however, doesn't say exactly how it should be enforced. So in the usual course of things, the commissioners and the police officers would warn you, prepare a file, submit a file to the DPP's office. There's a ruling, and depending on his ruling, you might be taken to court. So to streamline the operation under Section 34, the decision has been taken by Cabinet to make some of these offenses ticketable offenses. Not creating any new offenses, not creating any new penalties. The maximum still remains $1,000, but within that band of $1,000, Cabinet has come up with some figures for certain breaches. So where an offense appears to have been committed contrary to the public health regulations, a police officer may serve on the alleged offender a ticket specifying the offense and the amount payable in relation thereto, in a way similar to that which is done now under the traffic law. The fines range from between $250 to $750. I will give a brief overview of the offenses and the fines attached to those offenses. 1, not restricting the number of customers in a place of business so that each customer complies with social distancing requirement. You can get a ticket for $250. 2, not maintaining distance of at least 6 feet or 2 meters from another person. Just generally, it's $250 ticket. Holding a public meeting, a procession, or a festive ceremony, you can get a ticket of up to $750. Opening an establishment, an institution, a business, or organization, or office which is not exempt, a ticket for $750. Being a convenience store or mini-mart which has more than 6 customers at any one time therein, is liable to get a ticket for $750. Carrying out an activity or operation set out in Regulation 6.1 of the regulations, example, hosting a private party, or visiting or permitting entry to a private strata pool or a gym, or performing works of construction, $500 ticket. Permitting the visit of or visiting the following places: a place or facility of quarantine or isolation; B, a detainee in a prison or place of detention; or C, a patient in a healthcare facility, a ticket of $500. Also, permitting a visit to or visiting a residential home care facility without the written permission of the medical office of health, $500. Additionally, without lawful authority, remaining in a place other than the confines of the person's place of residence, inclusive of the person's yard space, you are liable to get a ticket of $500. Undertaking essential travel to any of the public places such as supermarkets, convenience stores, mini-marts, retail banks, building societies, credit unions, or a gas station on a day other than the permitted day according to your last name, $500. So those are the offenses covered. Let me just clarify that upon being served a ticket, a person may pay the total amount set out on the ticket, or you may choose to attend court and contest the ticket. It is entirely your right to do so. If you're served a ticket, you have 28 days within which to pay the amount on the ticket, the face of the ticket, or fail in which you go to court, you enter a plea of not guilty or guilty as the case may be, and insist on a hearing. You are not under any obligation whatsoever to pay the amount on the ticket. If you think you are not guilty, you are entitled to go to court and opt for a trial. However, I remind you that having gone to court, you run the risk of being fined up to $1,000 Cayman dollars. Again, I emphasize, it is entirely the person's right whether or not to pay the ticket or to go to court and contest the matter. You are not under any obligation, if you're not guilty, to pay the amount on the ticket. Thank you.
Mr. Premier, did you want to pick things back up or turn things over to His Excellency?
I think you can let His Excellency speak, and then we can take questions the usual way.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I first want to say that clearly the medical results today are reassuring, just one case and linked to another case. So again, it does show that our strategy for seeking to isolate, trace and suppress any threat from this virus is working. So please, again, we need your cooperation, because we do have an opportunity here to really suppress this on our islands, and I strongly support the new measures being announced today to help us achieve that. I just want to refer to the British Airways flight on Tuesday going to London. We now have over 150 people on that flight going to London, and there are a few seats left, but only a few seats left now if there's anybody who still wants to go, but you do have to act very quickly this afternoon. Everybody who is on that plane is being contacted to organise the payment details. I also want to refer to the test kits that we are purchasing from South Korea. I'm pleased to say we have confirmed that order, and they are ready for delivery on Wednesday, and that we have the possibility of a private aircraft to get those kits here a couple of days after that. So we are hopeful that that will happen within the next week, which is clearly very good news. I just want to clarify, a lot of people have asked why 200,000. That was the minimum amount of kits we were able to purchase. Many countries across the world are buying far more in greater bulk than that, and we had to negotiate a special deal to buy 200,000. I also want to clarify that this does not mean we are seeking to test everybody on the island, but it does give us the capacity to test everybody on the island, and we'll need to work out the most appropriate policy for testing moving forward. Finally, I just want to note yet again that at these press conferences I've tried to emphasise the UK contribution and support. I'm pleased to say that the Royal Navy ship that I mentioned yesterday, RFA Argus, is now on the way to the Caribbean. That was coming primarily for hurricane support, but it will also be here now to help any overseas territory on COVID-19 issues if required, and it does have a fully equipped sort of hospital on board, 100 beds, operating theatres, critical care units. So that, again, is another really important asset for us in the region. I want to again recognise the contribution by Public Health England a few weeks ago to help us with our testing facility here, and really encouraging and reassuring today that CARFA have confirmed the tests that have been done here. So we can be very certain that we have a robust testing system on these islands. Finally, I want to note that next Wednesday I'll be having a virtual teleconference with many departments in London around security issues, with everybody here involved on security, so that we can be looking at contingency planning on security and talking through possible scenarios and being clear where the UK might help us or might need to help us depending on how things develop. But at the moment, everything remains very stable on law and order, and yet again, I'm very grateful to the Police Commissioner and his force for maintaining that. Thank you.
Mr. Seymour?
Hi, thanks, April. Good afternoon, everyone in Grand Cayman, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman. Thanks for the prayers and encouragement. We are determined to keep this stream of communication going for you. Today's word comes from Psalms 91, 10 to 11. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling, for he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. I want to give a shout out of thanks to the DE8 staff, especially the collection team. Please keep making us proud. Also want to give a shout out to the Adventist Pathfinders, delivering food, etc., and their team, and also the Meals on Wheels team. They deserve a round of applause. In our effort to reach out to as many people as possible in our cosmopolitan island, today's translation is from South Africa, Afrikaans, and also Mandarin. Try to do my best with this. The Mandarin was given to me by my daughter who's studying Mandarin, so I need to get that right. First, we'll go with South Africa, Afrikaans language. Blif, asseblief, tois, Cayman, aanit, uit, asit, Noord-Saklese. And Mandarin, chu li besu, I chu fuze, ching yu ze ja li. Hope I did some justice. And I want to say that we need to take this serious. I still see a lot of traffic on the road. I still see a lot of people congregating without the 6 feet, without their social spacing, etc. And I have a message for you. And guess who is still doing hair? Nails and brows. So guess who's still doing hair, nails, and brows? The mortician. You want an appointment with them? Well, keep going outside. If your ears can't hear, then coronavirus will make you feel. So, ladies and gentlemen, we need you to abide by the measures. I am sure everyone is stressed because of the uncertainty, of anxiety, as to when we will see some kind of normalcy. I say to you, we will not see normalcy unless persons stay at home and follow the measures put in place. Also, as I've been saying, wear your mask or some other improvised item, especially if you go into supermarkets and pharmacies. I also see some employers, and I dare to do this, are making some strange decisions in laying off Caymanians and keeping the work permit holders unemployed. I won't attempt to get into anyone's business model, but I am telling you this is not sitting well with us. Please have a conscience. Also, I'm hearing about the landlords who are evicting or plan to evict their tenants. I beg you to understand that if you help, if you keep a person alive by sheltering them, that your place will more likely be rented after this disease, as our efforts now must be in saving lives. Imagine people are being told to stay at home and they're being threatened. They have done nothing wrong except follow the rules. Work with us, please. I'm begging you. I've spoken to you throughout the week about public and private healthcare providers gearing up and preparing for this global pandemic. Part of this preparedness includes the Health Services Authority contingency plan to recruit medical staff from new jurisdictions. I'm pleased to announce that Cabinet has approved the Health Services Authority as an institutionally registered facility temporarily to employ medical personnel from Cuba in order to increase medical personnel during the COVID-19 crisis. Government and various stakeholders are working to make the necessary changes to allow additional medical personnel to work in Cayman in accordance with the Health Practice Law 2017 revision and satisfaction of the relevant council. Having the ability to recruit from new jurisdictions will increase the pool of doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel, which will provide respite to HSA staff who are already working long hours, hard hours to care for patients in our community. Cayman's medical staff is one of our greatest assets throughout this pandemic, as they are essential to each and every one of us. I'm proud of the preparedness I've seen being carried out at the HSA and in the private sector, and have full confidence that together, with the help of government, we will be ready when we need it most. I mentioned yesterday that the blood bank is in the process of looking at a few locations to host mobile blood drives for those that do not want to come to the hospital to donate. The lab staff are conducting site visits to ensure potential facilities offer a safe and secure environment that will accommodate safe social distancing. They're also taking into consideration having these on different days of the week to accommodate the Suriname policy within the soft curfew. The blood bank is working with their long-term partners, Generali and Car City and Hurley's Media, to make this happen. The blood bank is also working on automating some of their processes, such as qualification questionnaires, which will soon be electronic to help screen eligible donors before they donate, as well as help expedite the donation process. There have been some questions as to why many of the UK cannot donate blood. However, this is due to the mad cow disease in the 1980s and 90s. So I want to clarify that although Cayman is an overseas territory, the blood bank follows the requirement of the American Association of Blood Banks, as blood supplies are from the US. I have confidence that those who are eligible here to donate will respond, showing their Cayman kind. I hope to report more information regarding the progress next week. On another note, I want to emphasize to you, the public, to continue to take this situation seriously, as we, the government, are doing all, as the world has turned to social media to gather its information. We are seeing more and more healthcare workers, particularly in the United States, posting videos pleading with people to stay home. Doctors and nurses are asking people to cancel their upcoming birthday parties and backyard barbecues. They are sharing videos directly with anyone who's willing to take a few minutes to watch and listen to information directly from the proverbial horse's mouth. They are telling people of the several instances per day that they have to watch as someone dies in solitude without their loved ones surrounding them. We've seen doctors taking interviews in emergency rooms where a patient is in the background and dies, live on air as the interview was being conducted. Why are these healthcare workers sharing these horrifying stories? Because the reality of a patient being dropped off at a hospital's emergency room and never returning to their families is all too real for them. Healthcare workers in the US, Spain, and Italy have been struggling to manage with the thousands of new cases that come in every day. I refer you to the Premier's daily Grim Reaper report. Please don't risk our hospitals being overrun and becoming under-equipped, where our doctors have to post a tearful video on social media pleading for us to understand the hardships that are going on, that we are going through in choosing which people to die and which people to live. This isn't a joke. Stay at home. If you think that this can't happen or won't happen in Cayman or perhaps Cayman Brac feels shielded because domestic flights have been decreased, we should all think again. So while I've been offering hope through the scriptures and in my poems, today I want to say that without action, faith is dead. We need you to stay at home, only go outside for the essentials. Let the essentials be defined by the things you absolutely cannot go without. The instructions is simple. Staying at home saves lives. Staying at home is Caymankind. Please, my people, we are in a good position now to help to stop the spread. We are doing everything we can to keep you and all our loved ones safe, but it is all futile without the help of our community. I thank you and God bless.
Thank you, sir. We do have some questions from the press. They've been standing by for a bit. Let's start with Mr. Lewis from the Canadian Times. Ralph?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here to ask for questions. I'll keep it very brief to give my other colleagues some time to ask their questions as well. And the first question is for the Premier. Can you give us an update on whether the post office or other government offices will be open during the 2 weeks of curfew? And also, when will the money transfer businesses be able to operate?
Well, to answer the last one first, I don't know. I don't know of any requests from money transfer services officially to be allowed to operate. I would say it will be a bit easier now to deal with those matters if they can put in place the necessary measures to ensure physical distancing, because the numbers of people on the road at any given time ought to be significantly reduced when these new regulations come into effect next week. I still don't know the answer to the post office, and forgive me for that because you did ask yesterday. I just didn't remember to inquire myself. And I think there was a third question.
Yes, this one's for Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee, the results that you've shown of those individuals who tested positive seems to be good. In other words, only maybe two individuals are having significant illnesses. What would you say to those in the public who are saying, well, okay, we can weather this storm, we can get sick, but we can get through this illness without any major sicknesses in the Cayman Islands, maybe because of our strong resistance or the temperatures. What would you say to those people, sir?
That is an absolutely false thought and very dangerous indeed. I think this disease can ravage communities in an instant. Do not doubt that for 1 second. And it doesn't really matter because it looks like you can have two people that are seemingly the same and one person will die or be seriously affected and one person won't be affected at all. So please take this incredibly seriously. We have managed so far to have not that many people be admitted to hospital, but we have had a death and we have somebody that's in hospital unwell. It is on our doorstep. We have to continue to stay at home, keep away from other people, keep your hands clean, manage your respiratory etiquette in order to protect yourselves and your loved ones from this disease, because it will, if given the chance, ravage this community.
Thank you very much, and that's it for me for today.
Thank you, Ralph. Up next, we have Donna Bush from CIG-TV. Donna? Don't forget to unmute your mic, Donna.
Sorry about that. Hello to everybody. I have lots and lots of questions, but I'm going to try and get in a few here. This first one is for Commissioner Byrne. You've been providing a lot of data every day on the number of persons who've been breaking curfew. Have you seen any real fluctuation in those numbers going down?
I think the answer to that, Donna, is nighttime curfew is going very well, and certainly we're seeing some measures in that. I think I reported today some people are not paying attention or the required level of attention to the soft curfew. When you have 3 construction workers working when they've been told or prohibited by regulation, and other persons moving around with the excuse, I'm going to see a friend. So we haven't reached a point where everyone has taken the regulations as serious as they should. And I think that's been re-emphasised daily by the panel. So nighttime curfew going, I would think, quite well, and people getting the message. Daytime curfew, I think people are taking liberties and not complying fully with the regulations.
Some people also suggested for you, Commissioner Byrne, if you might want to ask people to have their IDs out when they're going towards your officers, driving towards your officers, rather than having to be stopped and asked for it. So just a suggestion there. My other question is for the Premier. Premier McLaughlin, persons are asking about, are there any discussions that are ongoing relating to banks and their hours and maybe opening a number more locations as opposed to just one location for each bank?
No, not that I'm aware of. I'm afraid today is exactly as I predicted it would be, because everybody is entitled to go today, not just the A to K and L to Z. So that's why there are so many lines today. The banks have taken the decisions themselves, essentially, as to which branches they open. Obviously, we want as many people as possible to stay home. So we're not actively encouraging banks to open all of their branches, because then they'll be back to full employment again. It is not business as usual. And we just have to get used to that idea, which I think a lot of us are finding it difficult to do. But we asked the banks about the hours they needed to open, and I think pretty much by mutual agreement we agreed 9 to 1, because, as I say, it is not business as usual. Quite frankly, I don't understand why so many people have to go to the bank so often, because most businesses are not operating. I understand those that have to pay staff and whatever the case may be, but it is not business as usual, and we just have to get used to that idea, get used to the idea that there are going to be inconveniences, and try to plan what we're doing that much better so that we make, we go out for one run, we get as many things done as we possibly can, and don't have to go back on Wednesday if you went on Monday, or go on Friday if you went on Wednesday. So I think it's taken us a little while to get used to this idea. But as I said before, it is clear that we are going to be in this for quite a while. And so it takes a while sometimes for these things to settle in, but we've got to get used to the idea that there are going to be inconveniences.
Premier McLaughlin, another question for you. You've discussed it a number of times, but the last time you spoke about pensions and discussions there, have those discussions reached any further with pension companies?
Yes. I'm never one to want to announce something until it's done, but I can say that we had very, very useful, helpful, positive discussions with all of the pension service providers, that is the private sector folk, yesterday. And I think that we have a pretty good plan in place. I'm waiting for a formal submission from them on Monday so that we can then look at it and I can have it discussed by my caucus and my cabinet. But essentially, it is around the two things we talked about. One is a pension holiday, that is the removal of the obligation for employers and employees to contribute to a pension plan for the next 6 months from whatever date we agree on. I think I can say that everybody is on board with respect to that. The other issue is whether or not persons, employees ought to be allowed to have access to some funds from their respective pension plans over the next little while as we go through these challenges. And I think I can say that all of the pension service providers were fine with that and understood that that's what's happening all over the world. So, as we always know, the devil is in the detail. So, working out what that ought to be, and bearing in mind the fact that there are huge differentials sometimes between what one set of employees have in their pension fund and what others do, working out, coming up with a formula which allows for this to be dealt with quickly, fairly, and simply. So I think we've made very, very good progress yesterday. But as I said before, this is going to require legislative change as well. So we're trying to work out how we're going to be able to hold a virtual meeting of the Legislative Assembly. One of those practical things as well. But I hope over the course of next week that we will come to some arrangement with the pension service providers, which my caucus and the cabinet can then make decisions on. But I'm hugely optimistic that we're going to get to a very good place, that we'll be able to help a whole lot of people who live and work here.
All right, Donna, thank you much.
Okay, thank you, Premier McLaughlin. Yeah.
Do need to turn things over to Wendy Ledger from CNS just now.
Thank you, April. I've just got some very, very short questions. Can the Premier just clarify the exercise question? We're getting a lot of people asking, will they be able to drive to the beach to exercise, or is the exercise now purely walking from your yard in your vicinity? So that's one question that I want to ask. And the second one I'd like the Premier to put on his community affairs hat and let us know what's happening regarding any payments. We've had a lot of people asking us, they are hungry now, they have no money now, and they've still not heard a word from the needs assessment unit. So what do they do? And those are my questions. Thank you very much.
I'm afraid I can't answer the last question this evening. I don't have a report on what the situation is today. I'll undertake to get that done for if not for tomorrow, certainly as soon as I possibly can get a response from the ministry. On the second one, that's caused us a lot of thought and debate. Obviously, allowing people to get in their cars and drive to a place to exercise creates more traffic on the road and more issues for the police and more opportunities for people to claim they're doing something that is permitted when in fact they were intending to do something quite different. But we've come to the view just a little while ago actually that on balance we're best placed to continue to allow people out for an hour and a half every day except the hard curfew day on Sunday to carry out exercise. We hope that people will exercise good judgment and pay careful attention to what the regulations are. There are now these ticketing provisions or there will be come next week, these ticketing provisions in place, and the police are going to, I think, hand them out quite liberally. So we're trying to do everything we can, knowing full well that we're going to be in this for a while yet, and that everybody still has to live, and cooping people up in their homes for extended periods of time with no break is not a very good thing. Not good for their health, not good for anything. So we're I think erring, perhaps some would say, but on the side of allowing exercise 6 days a week, hour and a half. But as I say, people need to remember that no more than 2 people in a group, social distancing, physical distancing, and be reasonable in the way you go about it so that you don't make the lives of the police officers even harder than it already is.
All right, let's turn things over to Reshma from Cayman Compass. Reshma has a few questions.
Thank you, Donna. Sorry. Thank you, April. Thank you, April. This one is my first question is for the Attorney General. You walked us through all the penalties for the ticketing offences, but are there other alternative penalties? For example, is there jail time that is going along with those fines, or is it just straightforward fines?
Thank you, Rashma. If you chose not to pay the ticket, but instead to go to court and have the matter contested, then there's an option of the court at its discretion, if you're convicted, to impose a fine or a custodial sentence or both. So it could be anywhere from $1,000 or less, 6 months or less. So you could be subjected to both, depending on what view the court takes of your attitude and the gravity of the transgression.
Thank you for that. My questions for the Governor now. In relation to the testing kits and the announcement today that we now have a confirmed order, do you have any further details that you can provide us with the costs of this order, and is it going to be paid through the government or the UK or a partnership?
No, this is being paid by the Cayman Islands government. I don't think it's appropriate to go into costs. I'd rather wait until we've definitely got these goods here. It's a very fluid and challenging global situation, so I think we just need to be a bit cautious on that.
Okay, thank you. I'll circle back to that when we get to that point then. In relation to the BA flight, you give us some numbers today, but I've had a couple of questions come in for people who are interested in being on this flight who are not stopping off in the UK, who are carrying on to the Philippines and India as well. You did say in your previous statements that you were working through like transit visa waivers, and can you provide us with an update on that? And if these individuals would need to pre-arrange their continuing on flights, or is this something that is also being arranged through the governor's office in this emergency travel hotline?
Yeah. I mean, very conscious of those issues and the difficulties that poses for people. There isn't anything in place for this flight, but I'm sure that we will be doing all we can to see what can be done if there are subsequent opportunities to organise flights out of the islands. But each individual has to be certain of their own circumstances and where they're flying onto and having the necessary visas for that.
Okay, thank you very much. This question is for the Health Minister. Mr. Seymour, you talked about the Cuban doctors and arrangements being put in place, policy changes. Have you had that conversation with the Cuban government yet? How many doctors are you envisioning? How many personnel you're envisioning to come into Cayman to assist us with our COVID-19 response?
We sent a request in terms of the many categories of persons that we would like to secure and how much we would need. Nothing is confirmed there. It's quite fluid, and the numbers we're looking at is between 50 and 100 persons.
Thank you for that. My next question is to get back to Dr. Lee for the questions that I had previously put on hold, if I may.
Go ahead, Reshma.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Lee, in relation to the Caymanian students that are being tested, I've had a couple of comments and queries come in. What is the plan for the students who may test positive? Are they going to be released to go to their homes, or are they going to be mandated to remain in the isolation facility? And I understand that some of the students who have not cleared the 14 days isolation but tested negative have been released. Can you confirm that?
Anybody that tests positive will be treated on an individual basis, because you're no longer looking at a group, you're looking at a person, and they will be assessed by a doctor, and then whatever the necessary steps are taken from then going forward. I think often many cases are, not all cases are the same, so if a judgment is made, for example, that their family are desirous of having them back at home, it could be that is where they go. It could be that they choose to stay somewhere else. That decision will be made on an individual basis.
Thank you. How many students have been tested so far?
I am hazarding a guess around 35 or so. I think that was the sort of order of magnitude for today.
All right,
Okay, so it's being phased basis, correct?
I beg your pardon?
Is it being done on a phased basis?
Everybody, when they reach their 14 days of isolation, that's where they're being tested. So these were the first group from today, and tomorrow there'll be another group who arrived on the Friday and on the Saturday and going forward. Yeah, on the Friday, sorry, and going forward. Yes, 2 weeks ago.
So Reshma, I'm going to have to ask you to leave it there for a moment. Dr. Lee also needs to answer a question previously asked by Wendy at Cayman News Service.
Wendy, I've got the answer about the HSA staff you inquired about who were isolated. They're all asymptomatic and they're all well.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lee. Gentlemen, we're about at a time when we need to wrap up. Are there any final statements that you'd like to make at this time?
Well, I've also got an answer to one of the questions that I was asked by Ralph Lewis regarding the closure of the post office. All of the post offices have been closed and they're deemed a not essential service and will remain so for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yes, I just wanted to report some good news in terms of the First Caribbean donates. Donating to us. It's $25,000. CIBC First Caribbean and Cayman is pleased to assist the Cayman Islands government with the purchase of much-needed test kits. US $25,000 donation provided today is a part of the larger donation of $250,000, which First Caribbean has made across its regional footprint. The Chief Executive Officer of the bank and Chair of the Foundation, Ms. Colette Delaney, made the announcement noting testing was one of the main weapons in the arsenal against the spread of the disease. She added community spread is one of the main ways the virus is transmitted, and testing is key to identify, isolate, and treat those affected and limit its spread. First Caribbean's Cayman Managing Director Mark McIntyre says his timely donation follows the bank's recent announcements of a suite of relief assistance to eligible clients. He added it is pleased that the First Caribbean responded to the core needs of the community and also thanks the staff and clients for their hard work, patience, and forbearance during what is certainly challenging times. Also, I wanted to note that Meals on Wheels, Jennifer West, noted that they deliver 330 meals a day in 5 districts. They got 20 volunteers and 2 staff taking all safety precautions. The team is ecstatic that we offered a shout out to them today. Thank you.
I also have a shout out. Again, more evidence of public-private partnership that is getting stronger all the time. So we had some materials which arrived for the HSA that needed refrigeration, but exceeded the cold storage space that HSA has. They put out a call, and within minutes, Thompson Shipping sent 2 refrigerated containers to the port free of charge to store the materials for them. So we want to thank Thompson Shipping very much for that. And finally, the government has produced a booklet of very, very important information regarding how we manage the coronavirus, COVID-19 threat in these islands. It's entitled Coronavirus COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands, What You Need to Know. This is what it looks like. It is being distributed as of today to all major supermarkets, all gas stations, all major pharmacies, some liquor stores, and Reflections locations. Next week, it'll be available in the banks and at the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service headquarters and at the HSA. So we're trying to get them also to the sister islands so that they can have access to it. But please pick up your copy of it. It will help you to understand how the virus actually is transmitted and measures that you can take to help suppress its continued spread.
Gentlemen, thank all of you for your time today. I know a lot of you have questions. All of us have been receiving them by phone. One of the things that we are doing, and it does take a bit of time to get to all those questions, is that we are compiling them, organizing them, and answering them on the government website at gov.ky/coronavirus. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be there instantly, and it may not be phrased in exactly the fashion that you asked, but we are putting all the information there to help give you the information that you need. And also, of course, continue to tune into the press briefings. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today.